Glendora, I'm adding some of this at the very end, which I think reveals the horrible things that these people can put you through, and it will give the public an idea of how to handle in case they ever come up with something like this. One incident was when Jason Bogley, my attorney at the time, filed papers for removal of the fraudulent executor Bankers Trust Company and other items in 2004. I hired him because I thought he worked for Ray Dowd, and I thought that he'd be good at, as a younger attorney, at filing documents and so on and helping us to write them up and things like that. When Scarpino came into office, Leo Malonis, the former chief administrative judge, and now he's acting as attorney with Pillsbury Winthrop Forum to represent Bankers Trust Company, requested permission from Judge Scarpino to file a summary judgment to dismiss all our objections that were filed by my first attorney, Peter Raymond, which Judge Scarpino granted. Now, since Peter Raymond was involved with the children, and I felt he abandoned me, so I got another attorney at that time, who was Mark Oxman. Now, we immediately went to Oxman and told him facts and told him Scarpino has to go. Oxman spoke to Judge Scarpino several times, and he refused to disqualify himself or recuse himself. So then, after we went to him, we wrote a reply to the summary judgment. Mark Oxman did this. He wrote a reply to the summary judgment. And Judge Scarpino's law secretary, DeBella, called for a meeting with the children and myself. It was a court conference. And eventually what he did is he had private meetings with the children and then with myself. The children decided to settle for little, which was not my desire. So that's when he had the private meeting with me, and he asked me what I wanted. As you recall, I had said this before, I wanted justice, and he said there is no justice in this court. And then he went in the other room and asked the bank if they wanted to speak to me, and they said no. If she just wants justice, obviously they didn't want to speak to me, because I guess they weren't going to give justice, right? So this was approximately, we went around August 2002, we got publicity in Newsday. It was after the senator I went to, and she called Governor Elliot Spitzer, and he spoke to Judge Scarpino and said that he wanted a meeting with him. He had a meeting with him, and then after he had the meeting is when Judge Scarpino finally, he recused himself. But before that even, I had to have an article in the Newsday paper, which Judge Scarpino didn't like, but he wasn't going to comply with it. Respond to it, in other words. So, anyway, after the state senator I went to, and immediately went to Elliot Spitzer, and they demanded that Scarpino have a meeting. So after Spitzer's meeting, he signed an order recusing himself, Judge Scarpino did, which left all his decisions in place. Now, I want people to understand that when you recuse yourself, your decisions, the bad decisions he made about me, are still in place. He should have disqualified himself, which would have eliminated all his orders due to the conflict he was in. He was representing Bankers Trust, and he had worked there. So he had no right. He should have disqualified himself. So people have to understand these fine things, because this is how they get you, because they know you don't know the law. And your lawyer is usually not going to tell you, because they got to the lawyer. Then the estate was sent to Rockland County. They did one order, then they threw the hot potato back to White Plains, and they threw it to Poughkeepsie, Dutchess County, with Judge McCormick's. And basically the papers went into a burn bag. So we were thrown around from one court to another, and then they because they speak to each other. One court speaks to the other. So you're transferred to another court, but then they find out what they're doing, and then they follow the orders. So where is justice? It's not around. It's not there. These were not the first papers that were lost. They were lost and destroyed, what they eventually told us. Someone actually alerted one of my people that basically they probably were lost. The estate file, Jason Bogley, the young fella I hired to do papers, this was another estate file he worked on at Westchester Court, and they sent it to Brooklyn Court. After the case was finished, the file was sent back to White Plains, and we tried to look for the file in White Plains, and were told it was in Brooklyn. When we went there, they said no, they sent it back to White Plains, and then Brooklyn told us to go to Rockland County and also Dutchess County to see if they had the file there, and then come back to Brooklyn to tell them. So we followed all these directions and went back to Brooklyn and said they said White Plains must have destroyed the file. So we were sent on a wild goose chase to find the records that had been destroyed, which were the records, the estate file. Now Dutchess County had a new they had new material plus copies of some old stuff that Kiko evidently gave them, because the clerk in Dutchess County that was there left, and this was a new clerk. So she was trying to reorganize a file for the McCormick estate, because we phoned to say we wanted to look at the file. And of course a lot of it evidently had been destroyed, from my understanding. So she was trying to gather things together. Now I went on here to say I wanted to just reveal what goes on in these courts. One speaks to another, and they tell them how to follow through and what to do. So what chance do you have? You go to appeals court, you'll probably get the same treatment. You appeal it, you have to look for new attorneys, you have to pay them, you have to go through the whole business. A couple years later, Peter Raymond decided to sue me for more legal fees, since the children settled and I didn't. And he did all this without a retainer agreement, as he admitted in his deposition, with his attorney by his side, Lenny Benowich. Now they were in Supreme Court. Excuse me, was it Supreme Court? Yeah, they were in Supreme Court. And now Judge Barone, who was the judge there in Supreme Court, that's where they took it. We found out later, this is another thing you have to be aware of. We didn't know that. My lawyers never told me. This should have been held in surrogate court. Legal fees are not held in Supreme Court. We weren't told that, and we didn't know it. So Judge Barone didn't care. He was going to go ahead, and so was Lenny Benowich, and so was Peter Raymond. So Judge Barone gave a court order that Lenny could basically do anything. The fix was in, And here goes another nightmare. They took Social Security money from my account. I'm sorry. They took Social Security money from my account. They also went in, I had a large account with Charles Schwab, and they went there to get that money. And I think through a lot of finagling, of course, they got my Social Security number maybe through Jason Bogley. I don't know how they got it, but anyway, they got to these different organizations, and Charles Schwab Company said, no, it's illegal. We can't give you her money. So then what they did is they posted a notice on my door that if I didn't pay what the judge required and so much time, whatever, they had a right to take my house and all my possessions. And they even ended up Lenny Benowich ended up going to the bank and wanted to get in my safe deposit box. Now, I might have mentioned some of this before, but it was such a nightmare. I just want people to realize what these people are up to doing. Now, a little someone came and alerted me that this person was going to be there, Lenny Benowich. So they had a detective that I could hire to be there. So I did. I had a detective there at the bank. And Lenny Benowich said, what are you doing here? He said, well, what are you doing here? So that ended that. And actually the bank would not let them in the safe deposit box no matter what order he had, because the owner was not there to okay it. So he didn't get away with that. Well, anyway, they posted this on my house saying that they could, they could get all my possessions or my house unless after this court meeting I would come up with the money. And what happened was I didn't owe this money at all. This was all completely fixed just to ruin me as much as they could. They didn't want me fighting for justice and trying to get my inheritance. They didn't want that. And they were going to prove that they could destroy me. So what they did is Judge Barone had the meeting. I think I described a lot of it, so I'll briefly say he called my lawyers in the back room and said, my lawyers told me you really are entitled to $100,000 back, but the judge wants you to bring a check in for $125,000 and get it behind you. Forget this whole thing. And I reluctantly, I didn't want to do it. I said, why? I mean, this is unfair. And no, it didn't matter. Let's get it behind us. Well, what kind of lawyers do I have now? But anyway, I reluctantly brought the check to get the thing over with. And the judge said to the two lawyers I had in the back room, can we get $50,000 more out of her? Now you see what's going on. So then he didn't care. I think they were going to put any figures on it they wanted. The judge was. He had a free open line here. So he said, well, listen, I'll put $260,000 down that she owes the lawyer yet, which I didn't owe the lawyer. I had paid him $200,000. The children actually were responsible, so I was entitled to money back. But anyway, $260,000 plus $150,000 interest. So it totaled $410,000. Well, you can imagine they were exhausting me to no end. And I had to hurry and get a loan at high interest from some friends we knew. And I put in the $410,000. And that's a story that I think is unbelievable. I really do. And I hope people learn that, for instance, here it wasn't even supposed to be in Supreme Court. It was supposed to be in surrogate court. Now, maybe they would have done something like that there too, I don't know. But the point is, there's a lot of laws you have to look into because your lawyer will not tell you. They get to the lawyer. And anyway, Jason Bogley wasn't going to help me. He wasn't up to that. He was a young fella, and I'm sure they said things to him. So now, I wanted to get that out, how that kind of thing can happen. They raped me, economically and psychologically. They raped me, that's what they did. Now, I'm going to go on with another thing I have here, hold on, which I thought would be a lesson to people also. And that is when the bank now drew out $600,000 out of the estate account. They never speak to me, never. I'm an executor. They don't talk to Suzanne. So she's no good. They don't talk to her. So I sent 2 letters when this was done to 2 trustees that were listed on the statement where they took the money out of, namely Brandy Goldenberg and another trustee that in the past years I don't think was on it, but Vincent Comisio. Anyway, they were at the same address. I sent 1 letter registered to Brandy Goldenberg, which was never received. It was basically lost, and we still have the post office looking into it to this day. We're not going to drop that. This is another thing they'll do. The mail will be lost, and oh, we didn't get it. Well, this was sent, registered. So if they didn't get it, that's not my fault. However, Mr. Vincent Comisio received his letter, which was sent to the same address, sent certified. Now, he did answer. He didn't answer. He handed it to Kiko, like they do. And that's another thing. Of course, both of them, they don't want to answer it themselves. And actually, we had noticed that Vincent Comisio, I believe, is in a class action suit after him. They're after him, and he's in that. But anyway, he did not answer. He gave it to Mr. Kiko, our really great, fond lawyer we're so fond of, at Pillsbury Winthrop. And Kiko really never answered my letter, the questions in it. I wanted estate tax records. I wanted some documents. He wasn't going to answer all that. It was a typical lawyer response by answering the questions. Basically, the money went for legal fees and commissions. So our question, of course, is what legal fees? What commissions? What about me? I had legal fees as an executor. The thing is, people might think, well, you go to the court, you tell your lawyer to file. I've done a lot of that for many, many years. They go in a burn bag. I mean, nothing happens. They go against you every time. They do not give you justice. That's it. So anyway, that's how Kiko answered it, just to get rid of me, he thought. Because they know they're guilty, of course. Kiko and Wynn Rutherford of White and Case. Kiko's covering for Wynn. Basically, basically we all know it's stealing from a widow who didn't get her money to support herself, as her husband had indicated in the will. And it was there for at least 25 years. And I think I told you that it didn't make any interest and the principal never grew. But don't tell me if the principal never grew. I mean, I'd like to know who did get the money. Is this the way they invest money? Who got the interest? And, the principal had to grow. If I had asked for it, they'd probably say, That's all you get, my dear, as they did with the stepchildren, stating that they did no wrong. The bank did no wrong, and that's all you get. And you have to state in the agreement you signed that we did no wrong. Now, I won't do that. I do have principles, and I am entitled to much more. I'm not doing that. So, as I say, they get into it deeper and deeper, and they have no way of getting out unless they admit their crime. And then they keep saying, the judge, we go to the judge. Well, they know the judge very well. Why do I have to keep going through all of this? But I'd like you people to learn what does go on. This is so hidden that I know many, many people. In fact, when I tell people I know, they don't want to believe me. Oh, well, your husband must have done something wrong. Well, I don't know, maybe he didn't have that kind of money, you know. There's all kinds of, thank goodness I wasn't taken in by any of that. Okay, now, and actually the judges I have here, which I'd like you to know, are only glorified attorneys in black robes, so let's not put them on too much of a pedestal. They actually want to see if you'll go through the trouble of hiring attorneys, getting rid of more money, and it requires money, time, you know, to do all this. And the courts, as I said, you have no chance anyway. Well, they actually hope that I die and go away. There's another example, which we cut out the picture some years back, but there was a great painter, very known painter by the name of Hoffman, and his wife, they had pictures in the paper, front page pictures. This was years ago. She died of starvation in her apartment. Her cat and her, in her apartment in Fisher Island. Since the bank, I believe it was U.S. Trust, would not give her money her husband left her. So as you see, it's been going on for decades. The other issue I want to say, it's like another trick that they pull. They let me know, I don't remember how, I guess in some order or whatever, they let me know that they appointed Gail Markowitz, who was the daughter of Herman Markowitz, who was a CPA and executor of the estate. They made her an executor because her father had died. This is some years after her father died, but they schemed up this little trick, and they thought they would make her an executor. And I think why they did it, the law firm of David Kiko represented Gail, as well as they represented the Bankers Trust, the fraudulent executor of my husband's estate. So what was the purpose? For her to receive, probably, her father's commission, and her father was involved as a defendant in an embezzlement involving estate funds from the real estate manager, Eddie Jr. As you know, Markowitz was also an accountant, and he did the books. Now the IRS disallowed his commission because he was wearing too many hats. He was making money from too many sources. So now they were going to have Gail Markowitz here, probably telling her she could get maybe her father's commission or something. I don't know. They didn't tell me. But they figured also she could outvote me then with them. So this is another trick they pull. And I would think it's completely out of line. I mean, she's an executor of my husband's estate. And actually, Gail, I don't think, knew at all what was involved in the estate. I think Kiko just said, look, we can help you. Why don't you sign up? I'll represent you. And, you know, I don't think Gail knew. She was very fond of me. She loved my music. Her mother had tapes of my piano, and they just loved it. So this to me is unbelievable, but I would like you people to know what in the world goes on. The system is so corrupt, including the Bar Association, which the lawyers belong to. And I'll tell you, all trust organizations, they engage in the same practices. It doesn't have to be just Bankers Trust. It can be other banks, lawyers, whatever. So I hope they see the light before departing this earth. I hope so. I've been asked several times, don't you think they have a conscience? I said, yes, I do. However, I believe when one gets into any sin, they rationalize and get deeper and deeper into it to cover themselves, and they try to reason with their perverted way of thinking. I guess the devil is at work. The idol is money. It's like a cancer that keeps growing and cannot be stopped. It spreads until one dies. I don't believe they ever really win in the end. Remember, life on this earth is really so short. They don't seem to realize it. Okay, now I have other victims that I thought I would just to let you know. We know quite a few people, but I could give you some examples, and they really don't want their names known at this point. So I was just informed I have 2 more minutes, so these things are going to take somewhat longer than that. A couple of them I've already mentioned, and I'm sorry, I must say I'm sorry if I repeated things in these tapes, if you were nice enough to listen to them to figure out if you're interested. But one thing I want to say while I'm doing this, I have up on the screen, the Steinway piano has the capacity to speak in the most beautiful and powerful language. And when I became a Steinway artist, they asked me to give a quotation. And as I said, I told you years ago when I was 12 years old, I thought God had spoken to me, I felt, and wanted me to speak through my music. So when I became a Steinway artist, I said I wanted the Steinway piano to be able to speak through their instrument. So they put the quotation down, they have my name there, and I'm still a Steinway artist, which I had this beautiful Steinway piano. And I get a signal now that this is the end of this episode. Thank you.